In early 2025, a healthy 65-year-old classical pianist named Betsy Arakawa was found dead inside her comfortable home near Santa Fe, New Mexico. Her sudden death puzzled the public and deeply alarmed health officials. Arakawa was the wife of the legendary actor Gene Hackman, who was found in the house alongside her, suffering from advanced Alzheimer's. The high-profile tragedy brought a terrifying pathogen directly onto the front page of every major newspaper. The medical examiner determined the cause of death. It was a disease typically associated with rural farmhands or hikers sleeping in forgotten backcountry cabins. Arakawa lived in a well-kept suburban home. She died of Hantavirus. It is a rodent-borne illness that remains totally obscure to most Americans, despite the fact that it kills more than a third of the people it infects in the United States. This case forces us to ask an uncomfortable question. How does an exotic-sounding biological hazard bypass modern walls, clean floors, and suburban security to reach a victim exactly where they feel the safest? To understand how it kills, look at this chart mapping the timeline of hantavirus pulmonary syndrome, or HPS. For the first week after exposure, the virus perfectly mimics the flu. Patients get a fever, muscle aches, and exhaustion. They assume they have a winter bug. They take ibuprofen, and they wait it out. This slow incubation creates a fatal false sense of security, because as the timeline crosses into the second week, the infection drops off a cliff into the cardiopulmonary phase. The patient's blood pressure bottoms out and their heart rate skyrockets. Inside their chest, the tiny air sacs in the lungs, the alveoli, violently swell and begin filling with fluid. Airflow is almost entirely restricted. Within a matter of hours, a person who thought they were recovering from a mild cold is now essentially drowning from the inside out. Surviving this phase requires immediate intubation and highly specialized intensive care. By the time emergency room doctors realize they aren't dealing with a severe flu, the patient is already cascading into catastrophic organ failure. The lethality of the disease is entirely dependent on this stealthy escalation. You do not catch hantavirus from an animal bite. You never even have to see a rodent to get infected. In the United States, the primary carrier is the deer mouse. The mice themselves never get sick. They live totally normal lives while quietly shedding the virus through their urine, droppings, and saliva, leaving microscopic hazards wherever they nest. The danger begins when that infected waste dries out. When a homeowner opens a drafty garden shed in the spring or starts aggressively sweeping out the corners of a dusty garage, they disturb those dried droppings. The mechanical friction kicks microscopic viral particles into the air. A person walks into the room, takes a single breath, and pulls the virus directly into their lungs. The exposure takes a fraction of a second. This invisible airborne transmission earned hantavirus the nickname cabin disease. In 2012, 10 visitors to Yosemite National Park caught the virus, and 3 died. They hadn't handled any wildlife. They simply slept in these canvas tent cabins where mice had previously nested in the walls. The tragedy of hantavirus is that the very act of trying to clean up your living space is usually the exact mechanism that delivers the fatal dose. The geography of the disease provides its own warnings. In the U.S., the epicenter sits right here in the Four Corners region, where an unknown virus killed several young, healthy people on the Navajo Nation in 1993. Researchers eventually traced the outbreak to deer mice and named the pathogen the Sin Nombre strain. But the lung-destroying American strain is only half the story. Across Europe and Asia, different strains cause a variation that violently attacks the kidneys instead. Western doctors first encountered this during the Korean War, when thousands of UN soldiers suddenly began hemorrhaging in field hospitals. Further south, deep in Patagonia, the Andes virus presents an entirely different threat. It is currently the only known hantavirus strain capable of spreading from person to person, occasionally requiring entire Argentine towns to go under strict quarantine. When you look at this global map, you see a highly organized network. The Four Corners, Patagonia, Scandinavia, East Asia. Every distinct strain of the virus perfectly matches the territory of a specific local rodent species. The symptoms change depending on the continent, the host animals vary, but the core dynamic remains identical worldwide. Wherever humans build structures near wild habitats, rodents will move in, and the virus will follow. The virus is not mutating to become more aggressive, yet cases are reaching suburban homes. The underlying problem is that the global rodent population itself is exploding, driven directly by a rapidly warming climate. This graph illustrates the ecological domino effect. Milder, shorter winters mean a massive number of mice survive into the spring. That heat combines with extreme weather shifts to create mass steers, where trees produce an overwhelming abundance of seeds. The mice multiply aggressively, run out of natural habitat, and pour into human structures seeking shelter. We have to alter how we treat our own domestic spaces. Finding mouse droppings in an attic or crawl space is no longer a standard pest control annoyance. It must be treated as a potential biohazard response. The Centers for Disease Control has incredibly strict protocols for this exact scenario, and the core rule goes against all human instinct. Never, under any circumstances, sweep or vacuum suspected mouse droppings. If you find a nest, you must open the doors and windows to ventilate the space for at least 30 minutes. Then, you spray the entire area with a heavy bleach solution, walk away, and let it soak for 10 full minutes. Only then do you wipe it up with paper towels, double bag the waste, and throw it out. Hantavirus kills because people simply do not know it is waiting for them in the dark. In a world with a changing climate and rising animal populations, our best defense is treating the quiet, dusty corners of our homes with the